Welcome to True Family Revenge. Please like this video and subscribe. I hope you enjoy the story. Let's begin. The thermometer nailed to that wooden wall climbs to 102 2 degrees Fahrenheit, sweat trickling down the glass like tears. My phone buzzes on the truck dashboard, a text from Riley popping up, "Everything's fine. Dad just busy." I see her in my mind, huddled in the sweltering shed, fanning herself desperately, while Evelyn lounges by the sparkling spa, sipping a chilled drink under cool shade. Some families protect you, others destroy you from the inside. The highway unrolls like a dark serpent beneath the blistering July sun. I clutch the steering wheel of my battered Ford pickup, my calloused hands steady after the 4-hour drive from Springfield. At 56, my body bears the scars of 25 years in the Marines and 15 more building my renovation company from the ground up. Silver threads my hair, deep lines etch my rugged face, but my piercing blue eyes hold the unyielding focus that kept me alive through 3 deployments abroad. The radio crackles, with warnings of unprecedented heat waves scorching New York State. I flick it off. I've endured worse in Middle Eastern sandstorms, but today a gnawing anxiety beads sweat on my brow beyond the heat. 4 weeks without a real word from Riley. 4 weeks of dodged calls and clipped texts, just buried in home tasks. Dad Jordan's gig has him globe-trotting more. Those replies feel off cold-guarded. Riley has always been straight with me, debating fiercely, roaring with laughter at my lame puns. These distant, polite messages, they come from someone else, not my girl. What secret is she hiding in that heat? I remember young Riley in college arguing passionately in a debate club, standing her ground against opponents, then negotiating a job offer, confident and unyielding. I know something's wrong, but if I speak up, it'll blow everything apart. Willowbrook materializes as the road crests a hill. The town sprawls in a lush basin, its shaded boulevards and colonial estates whispering of inherited wealth and ancient pedigrees. I visited 3 times since Riley's wedding 3 years ago. Each time the Hayes family subtly telegraphs that I don't belong in their refined world. The address sears in my memory. I turn onto Elmwood Lane. The residences grow more opulent the deeper I drive into the neighborhood. Towering maples dapple impeccably manicured lawns. Luxury SUVs gleam in sweeping driveways like polished gems. The Hayes mansion commands the street's terminus, a sprawling 6-bedroom affair. Riley gushed after the honeymoon. A luxurious spa in the back, a 4-car garage, plenty of space for the grandchildren Evelyn Hayes invokes at every reunion with a pointed glance. I park my dust-caked truck next to a gleaming BMW and step out. The front door opens before I reach the steps. Evelyn Hayes stands in the entryway. Her platinum bob, perfectly coiffed, her beige linen dress, impeccably pressed despite the oppressive heat. At 64, she carries herself as if affluence could halt time itself. "Harlan," she says, not moving to let me in, "to what do we owe this unexpected pleasure?" "Came to see my daughter." I keep my voice level, though my gut twists. "Surprise visit." Evelyn's smile is polished, rehearsed. "How thoughtful of you." She's out in the back. She needed some quiet space for her little hobbies. Her eyes flick to the window, fake concern flashing. "We do worry about her sometimes, such an independent spirit." The way she says hobbies makes it sound like a personal failing, a quirk, unworthy of their elevated circle. "I'll go find her then." "Of course." Evelyn steps back just enough that I have to brush past her to enter. She's been quite busy, very self-reliant these days. Not everyone understands our family standards, but she's trying. The house's air conditioning hits me like a polar blast. I glance around the granite foyer, past the shimmering glass chandelier to the grand curving staircase. Family portraits line the walls, but I notice an omission that stings. The wedding photos featuring me and Riley are gone. Only images of Jordan with his parents remain, a curated narrative of purebred lineage. "Nice place," I say, my tone neutral. "Thank you. We've always strived to maintain a certain level of excellence." Evelyn clasps her hands neatly in front of her. "Reginald is in his den if you'd like to say hello. Maybe later." "Riley first?" "She's in the tool shed. You can access it through the kitchen. I walk through the house, my work boots silent on the gleaming hardwood floors. The kitchen is straight out of a high-end design catalog, quartz countertops, state-of-the-art stainless appliances. Every surface sparkles under recessed lighting. Fresh orchids bloom in crystal vases. The fridge is stocked with artisanal waters and organic heirloom produce. French doors lead to a shaded veranda overlooking the expansive backyard. I step outside and freeze. The heat slams into me like a solid wall, making each breath feel labored. My shirt adheres to my back in seconds, sweat prickling my skin. The contrast is glaring intentional. The veranda provides cool sanctuary with plush wicker furniture arranged under ceiling fans that circulate chilled air. The spa shimmers invitingly in azure, encircled by cushioned chaise lounges and a stocked outdoor bar beneath a trellised cabana. Oversized umbrellas offer extra shade and ice chests stand ready for refreshing beverages. Every indulgence money can procure. But my eyes lock on the far corner of the yard where a small wooden hut bakes unrelentingly in direct sunlight. No nearby trees for shade, no overhang or canopy. No respite from the merciless July heat that transforms Hudson Valley into a natural kiln. The setup couldn't have been more deliberate if they'd hung a sign. I cross the pristine lawn, my boots crunching on grass, brittled by the drought-like conditions. The closer I get to the hut, the more the wrongness intensifies. No windows facing the main house. The structure seems engineered to trap heat, not offer comfort. I knock on the weathered door. Riley, it's Dad. Her voice filters through the thin wood laced with shock and raw emotion. Dad, the door creaks open and my world tilts on its axis. My daughter stands before me, her auburn hair matted with sweat, her face flushed crimson from the stifling air. She wears a rumpled tank top and shorts clearly slept in. Behind her, a narrow cot is shoved against one wall. A plastic storage crate overflows with clothes, and a small box fan futilely stirs the heavy hot air in the confined space. Jesus Christ, what did they do to you? I step inside the heat enveloping me like a living entity. I immediately want to retreat. A wall-mounted thermometer reads 102 degrees. Dad, you can't be here. Riley glances nervously toward the house. Evelyn doesn't allow what I grab the thermometer, staring at the red line in disbelief. Lord Riley, how long have you been living in this hellhole? She wipes sweat from her forehead with the back of her hand. Since Jordan left for his contract. 4 months now. 4 months. A cold, familiar rage settles in my chest, the same instinct that kicked in during ambushes in the field. Explain all of it. Riley sinks heavily onto the cot, the cheap springs creaking under her weight, a sound that screams temporary disposable. There's this rule. No non-family by blood in the house when Jordan's away. Evelyn made it crystal clear the day after he left. I think I tried to push back once, said it was insane, but she twisted it, said, I didn't respect their traditions, that it'd hurt Jordan. You're his wife. I'm not a Hayes. Riley's voice cracks with exhaustion and a deeper, more corrosive shame. Evelyn says the house has traditions to uphold, blood relatives only when the family's head is absent. Riley attempting to argue with Evelyn, this is crazy, I'm family too. Evelyn's passive-aggressive reply, some people just don't understand how real families work, dear. I kneel beside the cot, studying her face closely. Dark circles bruise her eyes like fresh wounds. Her lips are chapped despite the water bottle at her side. Her skin has a sallow pallor from insufficient sunlight, poor nutrition, and fractured sleep. You eating properly? She lets me use the kitchen early mornings before they stir. Riley pulls the water bottle close and takes a measured sip, rationing it like someone intimate with scarcity. I have to be gone by 6:30. That's when Evelyn has her morning tea. And nights she locks up at 9:00 sharp. Calls it security protocol. Riley's laugh is bitter, devoid of humor. Security from what? From me, I guess. I stand and move to the single window. It faces away from the house toward a high wooden fence that blocks views from neighboring properties. Perfect isolation. The hut is invisible from the main residence or the street, no witnesses to whatever transpires here. I turn back to my daughter and see her in a new, harrowing light. Not just uncomfortable, but systematically dismantled, isolated, controlled, demeaned in incremental ways that accumulate into something profoundly destructive. Pack your things, right now. Dad, I can't just leave. Jordan's back in a month. This is his home, his family. She gestures helplessly at the cramped space. It's just temporary. Baby, this is straight-up abuse. We're leaving. Now. I pull the plastic crate closer to the cot. My movements sharp with barely contained fury. Get your clothes. You don't understand. Riley stands and paces the tiny area, 3 steps one way, 3 back. Evelyn has pull in this town. She knows all the key players. If I rock the boat, it could tank Jordan's career when he returns. Hurt his whole future. I've fought bigger battles before in school, at work. Why can't I fight this? Because it'll destroy us. I stop packing and really look at her. The confident young woman who'd graduated with honors, negotiated her own contracts, never shied from a fight, now hunched in a sweltering hut because she'd been convinced she wasn't good enough, that her suffering was required to safeguard others' comfort. Riley, I say quietly, using the gentle tone from her childhood when imparting vital lessons. Do you remember what I taught you about bullies? She nods slowly, her eyes drifting to old memories. You stand up to them, and what else? You don't let them win. You don't give them what they want. And if someone hurts your family, Riley meets my gaze for the first time since my arrival. A flicker sparks there, the fighter I'd raised. You make them pay. I hand her the water bottle. Drink every drop of that. Then pack what you want to keep. We're having a word with your in-laws. Dad, no more talking it out. No more bargaining with the irrational. They declared war on the wrong daughter. We walk back to the house side by side, Riley carrying a small duffel with her essentials. I leave the plastic crate in the hut. I want the Hayes to confront exactly what they'd reduced my daughter to. No hiding, no pretense. Let them see the bin and the sweat-stained clothes and try to square that with their so-called family values. The air conditioning feels like stepping into a freezer after the hut's oven. My shirt is soaked through sweat dripping from my brow despite the brief walk. I can only imagine what 4 months of that relentless heat has done to Riley's body and spirit. I find Reginald Hayes in the kitchen, leaning against the quartz counter with a fine tumbler in hand. The sharp scent of whiskey wafts over top shelf, probably aged longer than some of my crew has been alive. At 67, Reginald has the soft contours of a man who'd never skipped a meal or lifted anything heavier than a golf club. His button-down is crisp slacks, perfectly creased Oxfords buffed to a mirror shine. Everything about him radiates wealth, leisure, and the certainty that problems are for lesser folk to handle. Evelyn stands beside her husband, arms folded tightly across her chest. She looks at Riley as if something foul has been tracked in on the soles of shoes. Her expression is meticulously controlled, but I catch the flicker of irritation in her eyes. She hasn't anticipated this. Showdown hasn't rehearsed for it. Oh, Riley, dear, you look so tired. We were just discussing how some people struggle with our family standards. Harlan, Reginald says, taking a leisurely sip of his whiskey, the gesture casually dismissive. Evelyn mentioned you dropped by. Care for a drink? No, thanks. I step fully into the kitchen, Riley close behind. We need to talk. Of course, always pleased to converse with family. Reginald's tone suggests the opposite. His smile is practiced empty, the kind reserved for waitstaff or minor annoyances. Is that what you call this? I gesture toward Riley. Family. Evelyn's chin lifts, her posture straightening with patrician hauteur. We've provided Riley with accommodations befitting her position. The shed is perfectly suitable for temporary use. Some people just don't understand how real families work, Harlan. Temporary. I feel my composure fracturing the calm I've held since discovering Riley starting to crack. 4 months in a 100-degree oven is temporary. Our house, Reginald says, his voice hardening, the friendly facade dropping away. Our rules. Riley understood the arrangement when Jordan left. What arrangement? I stepped closer to Silas, close enough to smell the expensive bourbon on his breath. The arrangement where you treat my daughter like hired help, where you lock her out of the house at night like a stray dog. We maintain certain standards. Evelyn says, her voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to having her pronouncements accepted without question. Blood family has priority in our home. Callie can return to the main house when Landon comes back. I turn to face her fully. Marjorie is tall for a woman, but I have 6 in on her, and 40 kilograms of muscle built over decades of physical work. I move close enough that she has to tilt her head back to meet my eyes, close enough that she can see the controlled fury burning there. What you've done isn't just cruel, I say, my voice barely above a whisper. It's stupid, and I'm going to make sure you regret it. Evelyn blinks but holds her ground, though I notice her hands trembling slightly. Is that a threat? It's a promise. Reginald sets down his glass, hard enough to ring against the granite. Ice cubes rattle against crystal. Now see here, Monroe, you can't come into our home and intimidate. Your home? I cut him off, my voice rising for the first time. You mean the home where you put my daughter in a shed like a dog? Where you make her beg for kitchen privileges? I look back at Evelyn, my stare unwavering, where you decided she's not good enough to breathe the same air as you. Riley could have made other arrangements, Evelyn says, but her voice lacks its earlier confidence. She chose to stay. No one forced her. She stayed because she loves your son, because she thought family meant something to you people. I pick up Riley's duffel, the weight of pathetic evidence of how little she'd been allowed to keep. She was wrong. Reginald straightens to his full height, which still leaves him looking up at me. His face is flushed now, whether from anger or whiskey. You're making a mistake here. We have standing in this community. Friends influence people who matter. Listen to us. I smile, and both Reginald and Evelyn take a step back. It is not a friendly expression. It is the smile of a man who has faced down armed enemies and lived to tell about it. Good, I say. That'll make this more interesting. I turn to Riley, who has been silent through the confrontation, watching her in-laws reveal their true nature with growing horror and dawning understanding. Ready? She nods, her face pale but determined. Ready. Excellent. I walk toward the door, then pause and look back at the Hayes family. We'll be in touch real soon. Behind us, I hear Evelyn's voice sharp with anger and the first hint of fear. Don't think this is over, Brooks. I pause at the front door and call back, my voice carrying through the marble entryway with military precision. Lady, it hasn't even started. My house in Springfield sits on a tranquil street lined with modest homes and mature trees. The 2-bedroom ranch style looks small after the Hayes estate, but it is clean and comfortable, and most importantly, it belongs to me. No rules about who can sleep where. No hierarchies based on bloodlines. Just honest work, rewarded with honest comfort. I crank the air conditioning to 65 degrees and make a picture of iced lemonade while Riley showers. I can hear the water running for 25 minutes, and I don't begrudge her a second of it. When you've been denied basic comforts for 4 months, you appreciated them differently. She emerges from the bathroom looking like a different person. Her hair is clean and properly dried. Her skin has lost the flush of constant heat exposure. She wears clothes that actually fit, jeans and a t-shirt that aren't wrinkled from sleeping in them. Most importantly, the haunted look in her eyes has begun to fade. Sit, I say, handing her a tall glass of lemonade with extra ice. Tell me everything. Riley settles in the kitchen chair where she'd eaten breakfast before school for 12 years. The same wooden table, the same blue placemats, the same view of the backyard vegetable garden. Home in every sense that mattered. Where do I start? The beginning. When did this start? She sips the lemonade and closes her eyes briefly, like someone savoring water after crossing a desert. It started before the wedding. Really little comments. Evelyn would ask when I was going to learn to cook properly, or she'd mention that Jordan's ex-girlfriend came from a good family with old money connections. Nothing big enough to complain about. I feel my jaw tighten, but I keep my voice level. What about Jordan? He never heard most of it. Evelyn was careful. She'd wait until he was out of the room, or she'd phrase things as helpful suggestions. Perhaps you'd like to take some cooking classes, dear. The wives in our circle all know their way around a proper kitchen. Riley's voice takes on Evelyn's honey tone, always with that smile. And you never told me. Riley meets my eyes, and I see the guilt there. Dad, you sacrificed everything to raise me after Mom died. You worked 2 jobs to put me through college. You gave up dating, gave up your own social life, gave up any chance at happiness, so I could have opportunities. I wasn't going to burden you with my problems. I reach across the table and take her hand. Her skin is soft now, no longer rough from the heat and dehydration. Your problems are my problems always. That's what family means. I know, but I thought I could handle it. I thought once Jordan and I had our own place, it would get better. But you never got your own place? Jordan's business was struggling. He's an engineer, but he was working for a small firm that barely made payroll some months. The Hayes offered to let us live with them, temporarily save money, get on our feet. Riley pulls her hand free and wraps both around her glass. Evelyn made it clear the house came with conditions. Respect for family hierarchy, proper behavior, contributing to household expenses, even though we weren't paying rent. How much were you contributing? $2,000 a month, most of my paycheck. Riley's voice grows quiet. Evelyn said it was only fair since we were using their utilities and eating their food. She presented it as teaching us financial responsibility. I bit back the words I want to say. My daughter needs to tell this story, not here's anger. But $2,000 a month is highway robbery for people living under your roof and calling you family. What happened when Jordan left? His company offered him a 5-month contract in Middle East. Good money, chance for advancement. We talked about it and I encouraged him to take it. The money would let us finally get our own place when he came back. Riley's voice grows quieter. The day after he left, Evelyn sat me down for what she called a conversation about new house rules, the blood family rule among others. No guests without permission. Kitchen access restricted to designated hours. No use of the spa or patio unless specifically invited. No television in the main living areas during family time. Riley stands and walks to the window. In the shed rule, non-blood family could use the guest accommodation when the main house was occupied by blood family only. The shed isn't guest accommodation. It's a storage building. Evelyn called it rustic charm. Said it would teach me self-reliance and help me appreciate the finer things in life. Riley leans against the window frame. She made it sound like a character-building exercise. I join her at the window. My backyard is small but green with tomatoes and peppers growing in neat rows. Simple, honest, nothing like the manicured perfection of the Hayes, but it is real. Did you try to contact Jordan? Every week at first, but Evelyn handles the family communications. She has the main number forwarded to her phone when Jordan's overseas. She filters emails through the family account, takes messages when he calls. Riley's hands clench into fists. Why did talk to him? She was always nearby, hovering, listening. I couldn't explain without sounding like I was attacking his family, so you suffered in silence. I thought I could tough it out. 2 more months and Jordan would be home. We'd figure out our own place and this would all be behind us. She turns from the window. I convinced myself it was temporary. That would make our marriage stronger, somehow. I study my daughter's profile. Even now, after everything, she is making excuses for people who have treated her like garbage. That stops today. Riley, what Evelyn and Reginald did to you isn't just wrong. In some states, it's criminal. Unsafe living conditions, economic abuse, emotional manipulation. I turned to face her fully. They took advantage of your love for Jordan to control and humiliate you. I know. Her voice is small. I just didn't know what to do about it. Now you do? We're going to destroy them. Riley turns from the window surprised. Dad, not legally, not physically, but they hurt my daughter, and they're going to pay for it. I walk back to the table and sit down. This isn't about getting you out of that shed. You're safe now. This is about making sure they never have the power to hurt anyone else the way they hurt you. What are you going to do? I smile, and for the first time since finding her in that shed, it is a genuinely happy expression. I'm going to war. And unlike them, I actually know how to fight one. I start my investigation the next morning. I drive back to Willowbrook with a small notebook and a plan. First, stop the neighbors. Margaret Fowler lives in the house directly across from the Hayes estate. She is in her 70s with iron gray hair and sharp blue eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. She answers the door wearing a house dress and an expression of curiosity. "You're Riley's father," she says before I can introduce myself. I recognized you from the wedding photos. She showed me. Yes, ma'am, Harlan Brooks? I hold out my hand. I was hoping to ask you a few questions about my daughter's living situation. Margaret glances toward the Hayes house and steps back to let me in. Come in, come in. Coffee? Her living room is comfortable and lived in the opposite of the Hayes showplace. Family photos cover every surface and a well-worn Bible set open on the side table. I've been worried about that girl, Margaret says, returning with 2 cups of coffee. Saw her faint in the yard about 8 weeks ago, right there by the fence. I went over to check on her, but Evelyn came out and said Riley was fine. Just a little tired from yard work. Yard work in 100-degree heat. That's what I thought. I offered to bring her some lemonade, but Evelyn said that wouldn't be necessary. Very polite about it, but firm. Margaret sits across from me. I didn't see much of Riley after that. Sometimes I catch a glimpse of her early in the morning, heading to her car. Did you know she was living in the shed? Margaret's cup rattles against the saucer. The garden shed, that little building out back. I nod. Dear Lord, in this heat? Margaret sets down her coffee with shaking hands. I knew something wasn't right. Evelyn kept saying Riley preferred her privacy. But what kind of privacy is that? The kind where no one can see what's being done to you. Margaret stands and walks to her front window. I should have done something. Should have knocked on that door and demanded to know what was going on. You couldn't have known. They were careful to hide it, but I suspected. My grandmother used to say when something feels wrong, it usually is. Margaret turns back to me. What are you going to do? I'm going to make sure this never happens again. But I need witnesses. People who saw things that didn't seem right. You got one right here. I'll swear in court if I have to. My second stop is Elite Cooling Services, a small company on the outskirts of town. The owner, Kyle Ramirez, is a stocky man in his 40s with calloused hands and honest eyes. He remembers the Hayes job immediately. Strange service call I ever had, Kyle says, wiping his hands on a shop rag. Ms. Hayes called, said she needed me to check the ventilation in their garden shed. Make sure it was adequate for extended occupancy. Extended occupancy. That's what she said. When I got out there and looked at the building, I knew right away there was a problem. No real ventilation system, just one small window and gaps in the wood siding. I told her the space wasn't suitable for anything but storage. I pull out my notebook. What did she say? She said it was temporary. Asked if I could install a small unit to make it more comfortable. I gave her a quote, but she never called back. Kyle shakes his head. I drove past there a few weeks later and saw someone had put an old box fan in the window. Might as well have tried to cool the place with a feather. Would you be willing to put that in writing? Absolutely. I keep detailed notes on all my jobs. Dates, times, what was discussed. Kyle walks to a filing cabinet and pulls out a folder. Here it is, May 20th, cost estimate for shed cooling system. I noted that the space was unsuitable for occupancy without major modifications. My third stop is the county sheriff's office. Sergeant Dale Harlan is waiting for me in the parking lot just as we'd arranged over the phone. Dale is younger than me by 5 years, but we'd served together in Iraq and maintained the kind of friendship forged under fire. He is tall and lean, with graying hair cut military short, and the steady demeanor of a man who'd seen enough trouble to handle it calmly. Hell of a thing, Dale says after I explain the situation. Legally, it's tricky. Adult chose to stay. No physical violence. Technically, she had shelter and food access, but forced isolation, economic control, unsafe living conditions that adds up to abuse in my book. Problem is proving intent and getting it to stick. Dale leans against his patrol car. You'd have better luck going after them socially. People like the Hayes, reputation is everything. What do you know about them? Old family, old money. Reginald inherited the family investment business, mostly manages money for other wealthy families in the area. Evelyn chairs half the charity boards in town. Dale pulls out his own notebook. They're respected, but not necessarily liked. Word is they look down on anyone who doesn't meet their standards. What kind of standards? The kind that change depending on who's applying. I've heard rumors over the years. Business deals that went bad for people who crossed them. Social exclusion for families that didn't fit in. Dale taps his pen against the notebook. Nothing illegal, but patterns of behavior that suggest your daughter isn't their first victim. I feel pieces of a plan forming in my mind. What would it take to damage that reputation? Evidence, witnesses, and the right forum to present it all. Dale smiles grimly. Lucky for you, I know exactly the right forum. The Willowbrook Historical Society meets the third Wednesday of every month in the town hall's main conference room. I sit in the back row studying the agenda packet I'd picked up at the door. Item 6 catches my attention. Hayes Family Estate Heritage Grant Application. The committee consists of 7 members, all prominent local citizens, with the kind of influence that matters in a small town. They are reviewing applications for state heritage grants, money available to preserve and restore historically significant properties. The Hayes application requests $45,000 in funding to convert part of their property into a luxury guest house while maintaining its historical character. I read through the requirements carefully. Financial stability. The Hayes have that community standing. They have that too. Proof of proper property maintenance, extensive documentation provided, and most importantly, evidence of exemplary family and residential standards, sworn statements from character references. Character references, who have no idea what goes on behind closed doors. I spend the rest of the week building my case like the military operation it is. Riley provides a detailed written statement about her treatment. Every humiliation documented with dates and specifics. Margaret Fowler agrees to document everything she'd witnessed, signing a sworn affidavit that describes the fainting incident and her subsequent concerns. Kyle Ramirez prepares a formal report on the shed's condition, complete with photographs and professional recommendations that had been ignored. Sergeant Dale helps me understand which laws might have been violated and what evidence would be most compelling in a public forum. More importantly, he provides credibility. When a sworn law enforcement officer supports your claims, people listen. I also make some discreet inquiries around town. The Hayes have enemies, people who have been on the wrong side of their judgment over the years. A restaurant owner whose family had been excluded from the country club after a minor social faux pas. A contractor who'd been blacklisted after a dispute over payment that had cost him 3 months of work. A young teacher who'd been passed over for promotion after crossing Evelyn on a school board issue involving funding for special needs children. None of them would speak publicly against the Hayes family directly. That would be social suicide in a town where reputation matters more than truth. But they all listen with great interest when I explain what had happened to Riley. And they all promised to be at the Heritage Committee meeting, where began to spread through the networks that exist in every small town. Whispers in grocery store aisles, conversations over coffee at the diner. Speculation about what really goes on behind the perfect facade of the Hayes. Evelyn begins to notice the change almost immediately. Friends who usually called daily go silent. Lunch invitations are declined with vague excuses about being busy or feeling under the weather. At the country club, conversations stop when she enters a room, resuming in hushed tones after she passes. The very subtle but unmistakable signs that the social winds are shifting. I watch from a distance as the Hayes social armor begins to crack. But I'm not finished. I want them to feel the full weight of exposure, the helplessness of being judged by people who matter to them. I want them to experience the isolation and humiliation they had inflicted on my daughter. The night before the Heritage Committee meeting, Riley and I sit with on my back porch. The temperature has finally dropped below 85 and a slight breeze makes the evening almost comfortable. She looks healthier now. The pour of heat exhaustion replaced by natural color. The stress lines around her eyes beginning to fade. "Are you sure about this?" Riley asks, her voice carrying a mixture of hope and fear. "Once you do this, there's no going back. Jordan might never forgive me for destroying his family's reputation. If Jordan can't see the truth about his parents after everything they've done to you, then he's not the man you thought you married." I sip my iced lemonade and watch fireflies blink in the darkness. But I think he's better than that. I think when he sees the evidence, when he understands what they put you through, he'll be as angry as I am. What if the committee doesn't care? What if they just see it as a family dispute? Then we'll find another way. But people like the Hayes understand one thing above all else: public humiliation. Tomorrow, in front of everyone who matters in this town, they're going to be exposed for exactly what they are. Riley is quiet for a long moment, listening to the evening sounds of my neighborhood. Kids playing in backyards, dogs barking, normal families, living normal lives without cruelty or manipulation. I keep thinking about that shed, how small it was, how hot, how alone I felt. You're not alone anymore. I know, but there might be others. Other daughters-in-law, other people they have power over. Other women trapped the way I was trapped. I turned to look at my daughter. Even after everything she'd been through, she is thinking about others who might need protection. I'd raised her right. That's exactly why we're doing this, I say. Not just for you, for anyone else who might end up in their crosshairs. The town hall parking lot is full when Riley and I arrive the next evening. Heritage Committee meetings usually draw a dozen interested citizens, mostly retirees with time on their hands and opinions about local history. Tonight, the room is packed with nearly 70 people. Word has spread that something significant is going to happen, and Willowbrook turns out to see the show. I had called ahead to reserve time for public comment. I carry a manila folder containing photographs, witness statements, medical records, and documented evidence of everything the Hayes had done to Riley. As we take seats in the front row, I notice Evelyn and Reginald enter through the back door, their faces carefully composed, but their eyes weary. They know something is wrong, but they don't know how wrong. The war in my mind has been building for days. Tonight it will finally begin. Committee Chairman Victor Langley calls the meeting to order at 700 sharp. He is a distinguished man in his 70s with white hair and the bearing of someone accustomed to respect. The Hayes have cultivated his friendship for years. We have an unusually full agenda tonight, Langley announces, and what appears to be an unusually large audience. We'll proceed with regular business first, then move to public comment. I sit perfectly still as the committee works through routine matters. Beside me, Riley fidgets with the strap of her purse. Behind us, I can feel the weight of attention from the packed room. Everyone knows something is coming. Item 6. Langley announces Heritage Grant application from the Hayes family estate. Evelyn rises from her seat in the back and walks to the podium. She wears a navy blue dress and pearls, her silver hair perfect despite the evening heat. She looks like exactly what she is. Old money, old family, old power. Good evening, Victor. Committee members. Her voice carries the confidence of someone who has never been denied anything she wanted. The Hayes family is honored to present our application for heritage designation and grant funding. She outlines their proposal with practiced ease. Convert the carriage house into luxury guest accommodations. Restore the main house to its original 1910s grandeur. Create a showcase that would bring tourists and prestige to Willowbrook. The Hayes family has been part of this community for 4 generations. Evelyn concludes we've maintained the highest standards of property care and family values. This grant will allow us to share our heritage with visitors while preserving it for future generations. Passive-aggressive undertone in delivery. Smiling too sweetly. Polite applause fills the room. Committee members nod approvingly. Everything is proceeding exactly as the Hayes expect. Thank you, Evelyn. Langley says, are there any questions for the applicant? Committee member Laura Simmons raises her hand. The application mentions exemplary residential standards. Can you elaborate on what that means? Of course. Evelyn's smile never wavers. We maintain our property according to historical preservation guidelines. We follow proper protocols for family housing arrangements. We ensure that all residents of the estate understand and respect the traditions that make our home special. Adds, some people just don't understand how real families work, but we guide them. Riley tenses beside me. The words are carefully chosen, but they carry the weight of everything she'd endured. Any other questions? Langley asks. When none come, he moves to the next item. The committee will now hear public comment on any matter of community interest. I stand and walk to the podium. The room falls silent. Even the air conditioning seems to quiet as I set my manila folder on the lectern and open it. My name is Harlan Brooks. I'm here to talk about the Hayes family's application for heritage funding. I look directly at Evelyn, who sits frozen in her chair, specifically about their claim of exemplary residential standards. I pull out the first photograph. It shows the interior of the garden shed, The narrow cot, the plastic storage bin, the thermometer reading 102 degrees. This is where the Hayes family housed my daughter for 4 months while her husband was overseas in a storage shed in 100-degree heat with no proper ventilation and no access to the main house. Gasps rise from the audience. Committee members lean forward in their chairs. Evelyn starts to stand, but Reginald pulls her back down. Gasps from audience members lean forward, whispering. Evelyn's face pales. Reginald shifts uncomfortably. I continue, my voice calm and measured. My daughter is Riley Brooks Hayes, married to Jordan Hayes for 3 years. When Jordan left for a work assignment, his parents implemented what they called the blood family rule. Non-blood family members were not permitted in the main house. I pull out Margaret Fowler's statement and read key passages. The witnessed fainting episode, the refusal of help, the obvious signs of heat exhaustion. Mrs. Margaret Fowler will testify that she offered assistance to my daughter on multiple occasions, only to be turned away by Evelyn Hayes, who claimed everything was fine. Flash to collapse. Scene again. For emphasis, audience murmurs grow. Next comes Kyle Ramirez's report. I read the HVAC contractor's professional assessment that the shed was unsuitable for human occupancy. The request to make it livable. The rejected quote. Despite being told by a licensed contractor that the space was dangerous, the Hayes family forced my daughter to remain there for 4 months. They controlled her access to food, water, and basic sanitation. They isolated her from potential help by positioning the shed out of sight from neighbors in the street. Victor Langley finds his voice. These are serious accusations, Ms. Brooks. Do you have evidence to support them? I pull out Riley's medical records from her visit to the emergency room 3 weeks earlier. Heat exhaustion, dehydration, stress-related symptoms. I read the doctor's notes about prolonged exposure to dangerous temperatures. This is my daughter, I say, holding up a photograph taken the day I found her. Riley's face is flushed and drawn, her clothes soaked with sweat. This is what exemplary residential standards looked like for a young woman whose only crime was not being born into the right family. The room erupts. Voices rise in shock and anger. Committee members confer in urgent whispers. Evelyn finally stands, her face pale but defiant. This is completely one-sided, she calls out. We provided accommodation appropriate to the circumstances. Riley was free to make other arrangements at any time. With what money, I shoot back. After you took most of her paycheck for household expenses, after you isolated her from anyone who might have helped Reginald Rose beside his wife. This is harassment. You can't prove any of this constitutes abuse. Sergeant Dale Harlan stands from his seat in the middle of the room. His uniform and badge command immediate attention. Actually, they can, he says. I've reviewed the evidence Mr. Brooks has gathered. Forced isolation, economic control, unsafe living conditions, and emotional manipulation constitute a pattern of abuse under California law. The fact that the victim was an adult who stayed voluntarily doesn't change the criminal nature of the behavior. More gasps, whispers intensify, camera pans to shocked faces. The room falls silent again. Committee Chairman Victor looks stunned. Are you saying charges could be filed? He asks. I'm saying any prosecutor would take a hard look at this case, Dale replies, especially with the documented evidence and witness statements. Evelyn's careful composure finally cracks. She's too sensitive. We provided shelter and food. We asked for reasonable contribution to household expenses. If she couldn't handle the arrangement, she should have left. Some people just don't understand how real families work. Left and gone where? Riley stands from her seat, her voice carrying through the silent room. You made sure I had no money saved. You intercepted communications with my husband. You convinced me that causing problems would hurt his career. She faces the committee directly. You made me believe I deserved to live like an animal. The committee members exchange glances loaded with meaning. Laura Simmons speaks first. In light of these allegations, I move that we table the Hayes application pending a thorough investigation of the claims made tonight. Seconded comes from another member. All in favor, Langley asks. 7 hands rise in unison. The application is tabled indefinitely, Langley announces. Furthermore, this matter will be referred to the appropriate county authorities for review. Evelyn stands trembling with rage. This is a travesty. We've served this community for generations. Our family built half this town. Your family, I say, closing my folder, just lost its reputation in about 20 minutes. Complications arise as rumors spread faster, leading to early backlash. A Hayes client pulls funds prematurely, and Evelyn faces a private confrontation with a board colleague who hints at her ouster. Meanwhile, I uncover more on Evelyn's backstory. Her own mother had been an outsider, shunned by in-laws, fueling a cycle of abuse she perpetuated. This adds layers to her character, making her actions tragic, yet unforgivable. The twist emerges during a phone call I intercept. Jordan had received vague hints from Riley in an early filtered message, but dismissed them as exaggerations, assuming his parents' strictness was benign. Internal guilt conflict peaks with Jordan's early knowledge, creating emotional turmoil. He's back in daze. This could break him. Jordan Hayes returns from the Middle East a week later, stepping into a world upended. I meet him at the airport alone. Riley had wanted to come, but I insist this initial conversation needs to be man-to-man. Deadline pressure. Jordan's arrival forces crisis peak. Jordan looks travel-worn from the long flight, his face registering confusion when he spots me instead of his parents at the arrivals gate. Harlan, where's Riley? Where are Mom and Dad? Your wife's safe at my house. Your parents are dealing with some legal issues. I pick up Jordan's largest suitcase. We need to talk. We drive to a coffee shop near the airport. I spread the same documents across the table that I'd presented to the Heritage Committee. Photos, statements, medical records. I watched Jordan's face change as he absorbs the evidence. This can't be right, Jordan says, but his voice lacks conviction. My mother wouldn't do this. There has to be some explanation. There is an explanation. Your parents are bullies who use your absence to torture my daughter. Jordan stares at the photograph of the shed's interior. She was living in there. All this time when I called, she said she was fine. She said everything was good because your mother was listening to every conversation, because your wife was afraid that telling the truth would hurt your career. I lean forward. Your parents counted on her love for you to keep her quiet. Jordan confesses I got hints early, a message about tough conditions. I thought it was exaggeration, trusted Mom's updates. God, I'm so sorry I failed her. Guilt crashes, emotional climax. I need to hear this from Riley. You will. But first you need to understand something. Your parents didn't just mistreat my daughter, they broke the law. Sergeant Dale is building a case that could result in criminal charges. Jordan's hands shake as he sets down the medical report. Heat exhaustion. Jesus Christ. She could have died. Yes, she could have. Why didn't she tell me in our video calls, in her messages? Because she loves you. Because she thought she could endure anything for 4 months if it meant protecting your relationship with your family. I gather the documents. She was wrong, but her motives were pure. We drive to Springfield in silence. Riley is waiting on the front porch, and I watch 36 months of marriage play out in 30 seconds, as Jordan sees his wife clearly for the first time since his return. The weight loss, the stress lines around her eyes, the way she holds herself like someone expecting a blow. Jordan breaks into a run before he reaches the porch steps. Jordan whispers Mom's standards. I see now how poisonous. I give them an hour alone before rejoining them in the living room. Riley sits curled against Jordan's side, his arm tight around her shoulders. Both have been crying. I've called a lawyer, Jordan says without preamble. I'm filing for divorce. I raise an eyebrow from Riley. From my parents' legal separation from their finances, their business, their influence. Jordan's voice is steady now. I'm also giving a sworn statement to Sergeant Dale supporting any criminal charges he wants to file. Jordan, you don't have to choose sides, Riley says softly. Yes, I do. I already have. He turns to face her fully. They hurt you. They could have killed you. And they did it because they thought their name and their money made them untouchable. I knew something was off early, should have pushed harder. What about your trust fund? Your inheritance. I don't want it. I don't want anything that comes from people who would treat you like they did. Jordan looks at me. I'm hoping you'll help me find a job with your renovation company. I know it's not much, but I need to start over. We need to start over. I study the young man I'd never fully trusted. Jordan is soft, educated, raised with advantages I had never known. But the pain in his eyes is real, and his anger at his parents is genuine. Can you swing a hammer? I can learn. Can you show up every day even when you're tired and sore, and would rather be somewhere else? Yes, sir. I nod, then we'll see what you're made of. The divorce proceedings move swiftly. Jordan has no desire to drag out the legal battle. He signs away his claim to the family estate, the investment accounts, and the business holdings that have been promised to him since childhood. In return, he demands that his parents sign a written acknowledgement of their treatment of Riley and a formal apology. When they refuse, he makes the divorce papers public, including detailed allegations about their abuse. The scandal destroys what remains of the Hayes family's reputation. Reginald loses 3 major investment clients within a month. Evelyn is quietly removed from 2 charity boards. Their application for membership at an exclusive resort community in Arizona is rejected without explanation. 6 months later, I sit on my back porch reading the Sunday paper. The Willowbrook Gazette runs a small item in the community section that makes me smile. Local charity gala falls short of expectations. Read the headline. The article describes Evelyn Hayes' attempt to host a fundraising dinner for the Historical Society. Only 15 people attended an event planned for 50. The proceeds barely covered the cost of catering. The event organizers expressed disappointment in the community response. The article notes diplomatically. What it doesn't say is that most of Willowbrook society has decided the Hayes family is too toxic to associate with. Riley and Jordan have moved into a small apartment across town. Jordan works construction for my company, learning to use his hands for the first time in his life. He is slow and clumsy at first, but he shows up every day and never complains. The other crews are beginning to accept him. Riley has taken a job as a bookkeeper for a local nonprofit. The pay is modest, but she comes home every day excited about the work. She is helping families navigate social services, ensuring they get the support they need. The irony isn't lost on anyone that she is protecting vulnerable people from exactly the kind of treatment she'd endured. I fold the newspaper and walk to my garage. I'd been working on a project for the past month, something I'd wanted to do since the night I brought Riley home from that sweltering shed. The storage building in my backyard is small, about the same size as the Hayes garden shed, but this one has proper insulation, electricity, air conditioning, and plumbing. Comfortable furniture, good lighting, and a mini kitchen. I'd build it as a guest house, but also as a reminder. The sign above the door reads Brooks Haven Safeport. If Riley ever encounters someone else trapped in an abusive situation, they'd have a place to go. No questions asked. No rent required, just safety and time to figure out their next move. Sergeant Dale has filed charges against the Hayes family 3 months earlier. Reckless endangerment, elder abuse statutes applied to vulnerable adults, and conspiracy to commit emotional abuse. The case is working its way through the system slowly, but Dale is confident about the outcome. Jury's going to take one look at those pictures of the shed and hear Riley's testimony, and the Hayes are done, he told me. Even if they avoid jail time, they'll have criminal records. That matters to people like them. Reginald in office phone calls of clients pulling funds, face crumbling. Evelyn at board meeting quietly asked to step down, tears in eyes as she leaves. Police at Hayes' door for investigation, Evelyn crying alone in empty manor. As evening approaches, Riley and Jordan arrive for their weekly family dinner. It has become a tradition, this gathering around my kitchen table. Simple food, honest conversation, and the easy comfort of people who understand each other. How was work this week? I asked Jordan as we finish eating. Good. Mike let me handle the electrical rough-in on the Anderson house, so I didn't embarrass myself too badly. Jordan flexes his callous hands with obvious pride. It's strange coming home exhausted, but feeling like I actually accomplished something. That's the difference between working with your hands and pushing paper around. I say one of them builds something real. Riley reaches across the table and takes both men's hands. I got a call from the legal aid office today. They want me to speak at a conference about financial abuse in domestic relationships. Share my story with social workers and law enforcement. You go and do it? I ask. I think so. If it helps one person recognize the signs or give someone the courage to get out. She squeezes their hands. I keep thinking about other women who might be going through what I went through, maybe worse. Riley, at conference, powerful speech. I lived in a shed like an animal because I believed I deserved it. But no one does. If you're trapped, know there's help. You're not alone. Audience applause. Emotional peak. I look at my daughter and feel the familiar surge of pride that has carried me through 25 years of single parenthood. She'd been broken by the Hayes family's cruelty, but she hadn't stayed broken. She'd used the experience to make herself stronger and more compassionate. Your mother would be proud of you, I say quietly, beaming down on you right now, kiddo. After Riley and Jordan leave, I walk to the Brookshaven and turn on the lights. The comfortable space glows warmly in the evening darkness. I'd never advertised its existence, but word is spreading through the networks that help vulnerable people. 4 women have stayed there so far, each one taking time to rebuild their lives and plan their escape from bad situations. That I think about the Hayes family in their big empty house, surrounded by all their fine things and their damaged reputation. They'd had everything and thrown it away because they couldn't resist the urge to hurt someone they saw as beneath them. Justice isn't always swift, but it is thorough. I had learned that lesson in the Army, and I'd applied it here. You don't win wars with single battles. You win them by being more patient and more determined than your enemy. 6 months later, Hayes family facing federal charges. My phone buzzes with the text message from Riley. Thanks for dinner, Dad. Thanks for everything. Love you. I smile and type back. Love you too, kiddo. Sleep well. I turn off the lights in Brookshaven and walk back to my own porch. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, new work, new opportunities to build something worthwhile. But tonight, justice has been served. Family have been protected. And the good guys that win in my book, that was new family, woman and child moving into Haven safe sign fades. If you know someone in this situation, call the National Domestic Violence Hotline, 1-800-799-7233. To wrap the arcs, I find peace in my protective role. Riley transforms from victim to advocate. Jordan grows from privileged son to self-made man. The Hayes face ongoing legal and social fallout. Their empire crumbled. If this story moved you, like and subscribe for more real-life tales. Comment your thoughts below.